a great Tuesday. Ask me why. Because the Tuesday has afforded us the opportunity to bring to you another edition of the program, The Front Burners. I'm Blessing Eichie, and Dr. Idahosa Osamhanze is here with me this morning, all ready to dish out his perspective on the different issues that we'll be looking at today. That's what we do here. You do know that, right? It is to analyze critical issues so that we can all understand what's going on and proffer solutions as well. Good morning, Doc.
Blessing, good morning. It's a beautiful Tuesday. Like Winston Churchill once said, success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. And I just do hope that as our listeners and viewers, today we get that courage to push ahead. There is more walls to climb and there is more victory to be won.
Yes.
And so don't lose hope and just keep on moving when we get there.
Yes, you know, Albert Einstein actually buttresses what he just said with his life when he tried 999 times.
Oh, yeah.
He could have stopped at 2 and said, I'm
You
done.
can imagine, yeah.
All right, let's find
We
out.
won't stop here. We will continue moving.
Oh, yes, we continue moving, and you need to actually surpass yesterday's glory so that today will be very much relevant in history. Let's look further at some other stories. The Economic Commission for Africa, ECA, has emphasized the need to strengthen sub-regional multilateral development banks to enhance their capacity to mobilize long-term resources and provide affordable financing for African economies. Now, this session was held during the 57th session of the ECA, which is the Economic Commission for Africa. And then they made this call in a statement published on the Commission's website on Sunday. And then there was high-level talks on how to ensure that the regional multilateral development banks are doing enough regarding development in Africa. There was talks about scaling up their operations, attracting investment, and also strategizing towards improving development in Africa. Doc, there are 4 sub-regional multilateral development banks in Africa, and they've been asked to scale up.
Yeah, I think that call cannot be more urgent right now as we see the geopolitical tensions globally. And of course, we're also seeing the declining power of our SY allies and friends in the West who are themselves facing a real development challenge at home. No thanks to Donald Trump, who is trying everything hard to ensure that aids are not flowing anymore because he's saying you cannot continue to borrow to do big boy outside. And so what I leave Africa is that a lot of gap is going to be in there. And we are seeing countries in Europe too who are passing through very difficult times as we speak. And that again will affect funding from the West to Africa. China is freezing somehow because of the deflation challenge that's also affecting. So it's only just wise to counsel Africa to find very creative and innovative way to finance its development, which of course is the worst in all the continents in the world, ravaged by world destructions and all the things that we see around, that we have not been able to actually focus on building good infrastructures that will make life really very pleasant to Africans. And I think it is just natural and wise to see our development banks really mopping up funds to build this critical infrastructure. But the bigger problem here is the fact that while they are banks and they are mopping up resource and they're going to lend to Africa, one also had to also be thinking that the African government or leaders who will be accessing this fund will be kind enough to repay these loans back to the agency so that others who have not benefited can benefit. Because what you find is that once you take a loan and of course you're failing, the bank itself cannot survive because the only way for the bank to survive is to be able to give loan out at some level of interest and then make profit, and then, of course, they can spread their operation through the 54 countries in Africa. And I think it's just a wise counsel.
All right, let's look at some of the sub-regional development banks in Africa. So there is the Eastern and Southern African Trade Development Bank, commonly referred to as the PTA Bank. There is also East African Development Bank, EADB, West African Development Bank, BOAD, and ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, EBID. So these are operational in Africa in 3 separate regional economic communities, and 40 African countries are shareholders of the sub-regional development banks. Now, talking about those who have taken loans to be kind enough to repay, it looks more like an appeal. When you have, of all the countries in Africa, you have 40 as shareholders of the banks. And then countries may take loans, agencies of countries may take loans, and it's more like an appeal to them. It's at the detriment of the other countries.
Yeah, we have to make this appeal because it's the way the political elite in Africa tend to think. So once you have more money coming to you, what you see people do is that they think that all the money is theirs, and then you begin to expand your spending for real. So you are not remembering that you owe somebody something until you are in a dire need or in a strait. Then you now begin to look around and say, oh, yes, I used to owe, now I'm going to pay. So these are the kind of thing that many African leaders do. We're not remembering that as money is flowing in, that we need to always cut our clothes according to our cloth. So it's difficult, really, that, of course, once you find some inflow come, and you're not using it for productive actions, some of them are stolen, some of them you put in area where they cannot actually produce any results, and so you are left really not able to pay back. And I think that's the challenge many African states are facing. So how do we block all this loophole? Yes, there's no law that can stop that, so it's only appeal that can stop it. So we're begging and really appealing to leaders that we should not steal resource. And then, of course, when we have opportunity to get access to facility, we must use it on things that can produce greater results. Take, for example, investment in research, investment in education, investment in healthcare. We don't see that happening really in Africa. So most of the time, you put money and you're building a big white elephant project that, of course, in your tenure, that is not likely to be completed and is not likely to add value to the economy. But rather, if you put money on some of the social service, what you get is that you train up people who become productive and they can actually add value to the economy.
And even build a white elephant project.
Yes, of course, when they make a lot of money. So we don't see that happening. And that's why research part of Africa is neglected. Education in Africa is neglected. Healthcare is neglected because they have so much money to go to where healthcare is well developed, and then they go to tourism elsewhere. And if we can stop all of this and we'll invest that at home, all those money that we fritter away on healthcare tourism, education tourism, which is so fundamental today, that we're having more Africa in Europe, more Africa in the America than we have them in school here, is a situation that has to be nipped in the bud. So this is where, of course, we should focus our investment. That when you're actually doing social service, put it in the area where you can empower people to be productive, and as they are productive, you can actually get more tax and have more money, like you've said, to build those white elephant projects. But we always want to put the cart before the horse. And then, of course, we are not able to make advancement or progress.
Okay, let's look at some of the reasons why it seemed like the multilateral development banks, the sub-regional multilateral development banks in Africa are unable to do so much. First, they have a mandate to support integration and also supports infrastructure development in Africa. And it is reported that part of the challenges that they have is mandate clarity. So when there is a problem with mandate clarity, you will see this, put money here, put money there, let's do this, let's do that, and sometimes deviation from the core mandate. And we tend to have limited development banks to infrastructure in Africa. You rightly pointed out human capital development, which is a key thing that I think we need to actually be looking at and also incorporate into the mandate of this development bank so that we are not looking at physical development alone, and whereas the minds of the people, the skill, ability, or the competence of the people is not developed. This is also development, and it should not be limited to infrastructure alone. Even when we're talking about infrastructure, is there a clear-cut-out plan of what these countries want to do, or what these agencies that are working directly with the development banks want to do? Or it's just, sometimes the projects are just an avenue to secure loans. So you must have a purpose to tie the loan to. So you say, we want to build a road or we want to build schools. But is there a plan that you're working with to say, if we build a school in this community, we're likely to have enrollment of this number of people, and these are the courses or what they will be trained for, and then we're moving them onto a particular field. Where is the link between the development and the results that come from the development? Until we begin to do that, have clear strategies that shows that we achieve this, we're going to do this in order to achieve this. We want to move from point A to point B, and this is the way we want to have this done. We will not have scattered projects. Now, if we talk about integration even, which is supposed to come through the AFCTA, what is the roadmap? What is the strategy towards that? Are the development banks putting in money to ensure that the common currency that Africa has been yearning for, we are developing a technology to ensure that works? What are we also doing? Are we developing common economic, special economic zones to make this possible? So I think that there are a lot that needs to be done, more like overhaul the operations of the development banks.
Yeah, but I agree with you to a very large extent. But I don't feel really that mandate clarity is a problem. You see, you just take it example where you have staff come together for a cooperative. Now, you see, the whole idea is first and foremost to mobilize resource. So if you have like 20 staff come and form a cooperative, and they realize that, look, the earning power is not able to do so much. And therefore, if we have 20 people in a row come together and we pool resources, we give you to you, you can do substantial thing with it. You understand it now?
Yes.
Now, then it comes to the next person, he does substantial. Now it goes to the next person, he does substantial. Now, but this is what you find. When you mobilize this money and it's given to me, so I go for Hanan. And then I'm not invested, and I'm expected to pay so that I can mobilize for you. So you find that because I have not invested so well, I am not able to pay back. And because I'm not able to pay back, that circle seems to be broken. And I think this is the reality that faces some of these multilateral institutions. Now, states needs to be clear where they need help, not the banks. So the states that makes up this region should be clear. Oh, I want to invest in human capital development, for example. My priority is that I need to build a road that can connect our major farm zone to the major city market or to the seaport where these things are going to be transported. Now, you have a point there that what you're doing is that this is where this investment is going. And then the state determine those things. How I want to spend it. I want to invest in agriculture. I want to invest in healthcare because that's a priority to us. And we see that a number of us are traveling abroad for health tourism. The foreign exchange that we are shipping abroad, we must find a way to put them at home. So that rather than private citizens traveling abroad, we have to provide a first-class health facility at home that will be equal to what they get elsewhere. Now, if these visions are well defined by the leaders of each of these countries that constitute this, then the banks only have a mandate to disburse, not to plan for the niche at the states. So it's the inability of the state themselves to plan that is actually making it difficult for these people to realize their mandate. Because theirs is just to give you assistance, and then you pay back with some interest, and then they mop up this resource and able to give more in the near future.
But the banks too are constrained with their capacity. There's a limit to what they can do. But if we're looking at scaling up would also mean having more resources to do what they can do. How? In this, you painted a picture earlier of how Africa has to look inward because it's more like fend for yourself right now in the global system. America is looking at America, China having their own challenge, Europe having their challenge. So it's like the era where manna falls from heaven is almost over.
Oh yes, we are in Canada already.
It's almost over. And if we also have a very complex situation of the states, by states I mean the countries, not doing their own bits to help these development banks. So where will the increased capacity come from?
Yeah, that's the same point we're making. So the state themselves, and this is what Africa need to do. We have to go back to those elementary principles of economics, which the trade by barter. You have what I don't have. And so I exchange what I don't have for what you have. And you in turn take what you don't have from me. That's the only way to develop trade. Now, if we specialize, for example, take Nigeria, specialize in producing rice. Ghana specializes in producing cocoa. Cameroon specializes in producing corn. Niger specializes in producing groundnuts. Then there become a robust trade amongst us. So, these countries are relying on your rice. And all these other countries are relying on this person's corn. All these other people are relying on this person's cassava. By the time we see, there'll be a robust trade among Africa. And so capacity will increase. But what we've seen in Africa is that we duplicate what each other is doing, and then we are expecting that we are going to trade with each other. And that's not going to be possible. So I think what we need to do as Africans, especially the leaders of Africa, is to see how we invest in areas where we have absolute competitive advantage and develop that sector. Take, for example, Bangladesh has one sector their investment is, and that is in
textile.
In garment alone, they are making up to 45 billion US dollars that they ship to Europe, ship to America, and everywhere. Because they have invested to develop that sector. All their institutions of learning is studying textile. And I think this is where Africa need to grow. And it is only when we are able to make enough resource that we can even contribute our quota to the banks. Because we are even funding the banks.
Yes.
And then the banks have so much money that they are not just only lending to Africa, that they can actually also lend to Europe.
That seemed like a very long shot. You know, all you just described about the trade by barter system and then Africa trading amongst themselves was supposed to be enhanced by the AFCFTA. But we see that itself is being stalled. There's disunity that is stalling it. There's the common currency issue that is stalling it. how do we overcome even that challenge of disunity? We seem to be the core of the issue. Yes, each African country has comparative advantage, but we choose to compete and fight for one particular thing rather than developing a comparative advantage.
Yeah, but you see, in Africa, I think the quest for power is so lucrative that everybody seems to believe that the only way to survive and be successful is being in politics. And that's why Claudacre in his work emphasized the need to de-emphasize politics and put huge emphasis on wealth creation.
Have we gone past that era where it is possible to de-emphasize politics?
Yeah, but we have to deliberately get in there. And that's because what people get in politics, overnight you become a billionaire. So it's easier to concentrate energy. And so wealth creation becomes so tedious that people don't want to get engaged in them. Because like in politics, it's just free money coming. So it's until we de-emphasize politics to say it's not as attractive as it used to be. If you go to people in the US, they tell you that they came into public office, they became poorer when they are coming out. Because the president knows what is due him per annum, 400,000 US dollars. So he knows. That's all he earns.
There are no allowances that are bigger than the salary itself.
So those who serve in the Senate, they understand that they are supposed to be rendering service to the nation and not to be empowering themselves.
Not to have fleets of cars as officials, for convoy.
So you see it. The only motivation for these guys to get into politics is that they develop capacity so that after office, they can become consultants to global leaders.
So it's more like a training process.
Yes, for them. But here in Africa, it seems to be avenue to make the whole of wealth. And so they tell you in the US, if you want to be rich, then you go to Wall Street.
And do some trade.
Oh, yes. So that is what it is. And until we start to emphasize that in our continent, the people are not over-relying on what comes from politics alone, where all we do on a daily basis is determine how to share the small cake. And nobody is making effort to build a bigger cake so that, of course, it can go around everybody. We will continue to move around in this circle. And I think that's where we are missing it. So what that means is that the bigger your elephant project, the more opportunity for you to make more money from the state. And so you can put it, a project that you know that in 20 years is not going to finish, and you start it, and you are putting money inside it, and you can actually measure your level of success on some of those projects. And this is a problem in Africa, and we are not living according to our means.
Yeah, there's a lot that Africa needs to do. If we're talking about stretching the capacity or upscaling for the multilateral development banks, then it needs the cooperation of African states as well to ensure that there is a clear plan on what we want to do. And so it is not because money is available, we just bring on any project that we feel will help secure the money. But there should be plans on what this money will be used for, how do we repay back so that the development spreads round. And for the mandates that the banks have, which is to support integration in Africa. Now, there has to be integration, whether or not we agree or we like it or not. Yesterday, we talked about Niger Republic asking for PMS, premium motor spirits supply from Nigeria. Before that time, there'd been the relationship, the diplomatic relationship between Nigeria and Niger Republic had become frosty because of the ECA situation. But little did they know that a time will come when they will need what Nigeria supplies. The same thing for other African countries. We all can actually make up our supply internally if we understand the role that the AFCFTA is to play and we give our support. And I think that, as Doc has said, we should be the one telling these development banks what way to go, where we need their support, so that the limited resources they have can be productively used. And that would also inspire other organizations that want to support to put in their money. But if they see that money so far that has been committed by the development banks haven't yielded much results, haven't done much because they've been siphoned by the African state leaders, they've been embezzled, then we do not expect that it becomes attractive for foreign donors, for foreign partners to want to put in money. We should understand that at the end of the day, if we don't make use of the resources, Africa stands to suffer for it, because when we'll talk about infrastructure deficit, it's going to take a lot of money to bridge the gap of infrastructure deficit that Africa has. So the little money that these development banks are bringing in, we cannot afford to blow it, waste it. We must be creative on how we use it. Unity is key if we must achieve progress in Africa.